Imagine a cozy cafe. Everything's dark oak wood and inviting. It smells of freshly baked cinnamon rolls and freshly brewed coffee. There are books on display and a cat sleeping soundly on the counter. The place is filled with peace and calm, and there are people enjoying their drinks while reading or writing. There are no computers or phones to be seen. It's as if time has stopped and there's nowhere to rush. In another room, there's a group of people engaged in a quiet conversation, making new connections and learning new things. It's a friendly atmosphere of a tight-knit community that welcomes anyone new. The entire space is filled with magic. Magic that comes from books, chocolate, and mysteriously good bakes. But also from friendship, good conversation, and the cats who always keep you company and deliver exactly what you need. Welcome back to the Cat Coach Café. We are officially open for our second season. How exciting is that? Me and the cat coaches, Aragorn, Apricot, and Prince, are certainly beyond happy to see you again. For those of you who are new here, this is a place where we slow down, tune to the season, take good care of ourselves, and share our love for all things cats, books, and well-being. In other words, we obey the rules of catful living. You could see catfulness as cozy living with a cat twist. Since we last saw each other, there has been some changes, and I am happy to share that we will be meeting once a month or once in 4 weeks to welcome each new month together to share some seasonal tips for cozy living inspired by the Czech traditions, as always, as well as meeting some amazing guests of our virtual cat cafe. That doesn't mean there will be fewer episodes though, because we will meet every month, meaning there won't be any 6 months break anymore. We might just close for summer, but we'll see about that. Meeting once a month will also allow for longer episodes where needed, so feel free to portion them throughout the month if you need to, and carve out pockets of coziness for yourself if you can't dedicate that much time in one go. This episode is on the longer side too, not only because we haven't seen each other for so long and because it serves as a bit of a grand reopening, but also because the conversation with our guest today simply could not be shortened. And I warn you, there's just something about the conversation with Alex Howard, the author of The Library Cat and The Ghost Cat, that just made me feel like hot chocolate. So if you can get yourself some, that is perfect, or shall I say perfect. Otherwise, grab your hot drink of choice, and we're gonna start, as always, with our short drink meditation to help us truly connect with the moment and slow down. So, are you ready? Close your eyes and take a couple of deep breaths. Inhale and exhale. Deep inhale and exhale. One more with audible exhale. So inhale and exhale. Now, take your mug and with your eyes still closed, smell your drink. What can you smell? What are the scents? Identify them and then let them take you away. What do they remind you of? What feelings do they stir? What emotions, memories, or ideas? Does your drink take you to a sunny place? Or perhaps to a distant memory? Or does it inspire a new idea? Let your imagination flow and smell it as many times as you need to let it fully fill you from within. Then take a first slow sip and notice how it makes you feel. Is it a feeling of warmth? Or is it refreshing, energizing? Does it bring you peace or calm? Or simply, does it make you feel cozy? Whatever it is, notice it and make a mental note how it makes you feel. What sensations do you notice? Take one more sip and then continue drinking at your own pace. And open your eyes. Now let's tune to the season. The Latin name September is derived from the word septem, meaning seventh, as according to the old Roman calendar, September was the 7th month of the year. In the Czech language, we use a different word for September, and in fact for all the other months, unlike in many European countries where the names of the month are pretty similar. We opt for a bit more, let's say, poetic names for the months, more in time with what is occurring in nature around us, and that's much more rooted in folklore as well. So, for example, Září, the Czech name for September, is inspired by the rotting season and the sounds associated with that. It is a month of wine harvest and feasts, specifically feasts commemorating consecration of local churches, which is why every town or village would celebrate during different time. And being it a Czech folk tradition, it would be accompanied by delicious sweet little pies, among other delicious food. This consecration feast, called posvícení in Czech, was also a time to celebrate the end of works at the fields, and thus a reason to party. New harvest of poppy seeds was in the pantry, as was fresh flour and damsons, all ready for the Czech sourdough buns with poppy seeds and damson filling. Yes, delicious. Poppy seeds would also be used for special pies, topped up with several different fillings all at once in beautiful patterns. These would be poppy, quark, jam, nuts, or even fresh fruit. Smaller pies would be made with just one type of filling. However, within the batch, all the different fillings would still be used. So you wouldn't get just 50 tiny pies with, let's say, nut filling, but rather 10 of each. I know it sounds like a lot of work, and it is. I tried it for the first time last year, but it's also a lot of fun. And most importantly, it is absolutely delicious. And it's also a perfect way to slow down and dedicate your morning to baking. September, of course, welcomes autumn, with the autumn equinox falling to September 22nd. And that's where a true celebration is in place, because if you're anything like me, you simply love autumn. At the end of the month, on September 28th, we celebrate St. Wenceslas in the Czech Republic. St. Wenceslas Day has long been connected with Indian summer season, often called Wenceslas summer in the past, while these days Indian summer is called grandma's summer in the Czech language, which makes perfect sense to me because it is the old summer after all. You know, the wise and beautiful. September is also the time to plant bulbs of tulips and other bulbous flowers to prepare for a beautiful spring. And it's also a time of collecting seeds, which we will be planting again next year. So, let me ask you, what seeds from this year can you collect and plant again next year? Both literally and figuratively. What went well, grew, and produced enough so you can build upon that again next year? Have a think. And if you like some more seasonal journaling prompts like these, join us at the Positive Mind Club, where we meet on the first day of every month for an hour of journaling. It's completely free, and you will find it on my Substack at moneyforce.substack.com. The link will also be in the show notes. Talking of Substack, your cat coach Aragorn has something to say. Hey guys, I see quite a few new faces around, so I figured it's time to reintroduce myself and share some basic lessons to help you kickstart your new way of uncomplicating living, the cat way. I'm Aragorn, and I'm a pretty handsome cat. They might have told you that looks don't matter, but trust me, they do. Definitely in the cat world. How else would any of us ever find a home? Anyway, I've spent many years observing humans and their funny ways, and after 10 years in their company and teaching them quite a bit, I realized there must be more desperate human souls out there who could use some cat guidance too. And so I became a cat coach. That is a fancy word for someone who is supposed to help you live a better life. It's funny anyone would even need that, but such is the world and life of humans. They're born and then they forget everything. At least everything important. You see, humans can make their lives so complicated. And yet, life really is simple. All you need is a positive attitude and to live a bit more catfully. Then life becomes a breeze. But first, you need to stop asking yourself all those unnecessary questions. Two of my all-time favorites are what if and what's my purpose? I mean, seriously, you guys just want to make your lives more difficult. We cats have a much shorter span of life, and yet we never ask what if. If we asked that question every time we wanted to jump that high shelf, ask for food, or try to fit into that cardboard box, we would never achieve anything. Not only do these thoughts slow you down and therefore postpone the desired outcome, but they also put doubt into your soul. And while feeling doubtful, you will never achieve anything because you'll freeze and then run away as fast as you can. So stop wasting time by asking all those silly what if questions. Do you feel like doing it? Great, do it. You see, we all have instincts, and instincts always lead us the right way. Only some of you forgot to use them. So just jump and see what happens. And do not fear failure. Failure is part of the plan. I can't tell you how many times me or one of my brothers failed at jumping somewhere, and our humans went all nuts about it. They started using their pitiful voices, and we're like, "Ah, don't worry, we haven't seen that. We'll pretend it never happened." As if we needed them to. They falsely interpret our confident leap for shame, but they couldn't be further from the truth. Cats never feel any shame, at least not for themselves. We tried, it didn't work out. That's fine. You see, with every failure, you're getting closer to your goal. So the quicker you fail, the quicker you get there. And there's absolutely nothing shameful about failing. That's why we don't crawl away when such things happen, but rather proudly walk away. So really, instead of asking that what if question, now you're surprised how I weaved it all nicely together, huh? Just go ahead and fail or not. Either way, it's much quicker to just try it rather than elaborating on all the possible outcomes and losing sleep over something that could be solved in a second. I mean, ever wondered why we spend so much time sleeping? Exactly, because we don't waste our time on what ifs. Now let's get to the juicy part. What's my purpose? This one's funny. People apparently spend lifetimes looking for their purpose as if it were something they could find somewhere on the street. Now, I'm not exactly a streetwise cat. I've been lucky enough in my life to be a house cat since the day I was born, thanks to my irresistible looks. Some could even call me spoiled, but honestly, I only get what I deserve. In any case, I'm pretty sure you can't find anyone's purpose lying on the street, least of all yours. The purpose lies in catfulness, that is, living in the moment. The fact that you are alive and living this day. Let me rephrase that. The purpose is to live. So next time you go looking for your purpose, do yourself a favor and stop and feel yourself alive. Roll out on your back and let someone scratch your belly. Purr because you're next to your loved one. Observe, learn, breathe, and repeat. This was taken from the Cat Coach Diaries, which are part of my Substack. Again, can be found on moniforce.substack.com, and there are many more because our cat coaches are eager to help you make your life less complicated. Before we dive into our chat with our today's guest, I need to give you a little heads up on what we will talk about. Alex mentions the beautiful Czech cartoon Cat, which can be translated as Molly or Little Mole, which is most likely the most famous Czech character there is. A character of Little Mole could not escape your attention if you ever visited the Czech Republic, because it's just everywhere. There's merchandise with it literally on every step in Prague. If you're curious to find out more about this cartoon, I have put links into the show notes so you can check it out. Now, let me introduce you to our guest properly. Alex Howard is an author, editor, and a theatre professional from Edinburgh. A doctoral graduate of English literature, Alex wrote his first book, The Library Cat, while completing his PhD. It won the People's Book Prize in 2017 and has been translated into French, Korean, and Italian. He also writes poetry, which has been published in New Writing Scotland, Gutter, and the London Magazine, among others. And his academic book, Larkin's Travelling Spirit, was published in 2021 by Palgrave Macmillan. His second cat book, The Ghost Cat, became Times and USA Today bestseller. Alex works at Capitol Theatre as a creative engagement coordinator and editor, and you can also find him on TikTok as the brass-loving, antique-restoring House Dr. Alex, where he garnered nearly 300,000 followers. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome Alex at the Cat Coach Café. And I thought the best way to start would be for him to read us a little snippet from his beautiful book, The Library Cat.
Library Cat watched in horror. A few yards off, walking imperiously over the cobbles, was his French cousin, Bibliosha. Unlike last year when Bibliochat arrived in Edinburgh having given up France for Lent, this year he was on the hunt for a particular book entitled Mouse and Mousing Towards a Camusian Phenomenology of the Hunt. It was difficult to describe the level of hostility LibraryCat harboured towards his French cousin. Bibliochat's jaunty air, his frilly red collar, his late-night réflexions de Sartre, whatever they were, and his showy rejection of Whisker's wet food all stirred a strange rage in LibraryCat, which he could neither fully understand nor control. Bibliochat was, in deportment and character, the complete antithesis to South London Tom. Honestly, he should take a look at himself, seethed LibraryCat, as his cousin trotted past the David Hume Tower, ignoring the inevitable attention he garnered among all the human students. He didn't so much walk as glide, and there was something so ethereally learned about Bibliochat that it made LibraryCat jealous. Everything about him was preened and shimmering with self-aware Frenchness. Needless to say, Bibliochat was spawned from a long line of thoroughbred thinking cats, apparently dating back to the time of the French Revolution, though LibraryCat suspected there might have been a bit of alley cat thrown in along the way, an addition that would annoyingly only add to his Gallic charm. It was around this time that his line began to develop a long, deep-rooted alliance with Scotland, profiting greatly from that country's academic advances during the Scottish Enlightenment, and gravitating towards their warm public hostelries and rat-infested 14-storey tenements. Moreover, Scotland at that time offered refuge for many thinking cats. When a bloody class war raged, forcing the more succulent rodents to flee from the immutable sound of the slicing guillotine, Scotland and its new civilized society of sedentary Adam Smiths, David Humes, William Robsons, Henry Playfairs, and Adam Fergusons offered a welcome oasis for the French thinking cat. I'll just leave it there.
It's perfect. I love it. So, for our listeners who are not familiar with your book, tell us where you found the inspiration. Tell us about the original LibraryCat.
So it's a very funny background to inspiration, really, for a book, because it all started with me procrastinating from doing a master's and PhD at Edinburgh University. And I encountered this cat outside the university library who would sort of come for a little sniff, and I'd stroke the cat when I was having a break for a coffee between writing. And I started to think that this cat was a little bit different from other cats I'd seen. He was a very big cat. He liked a lot of attention, but he also didn't like too much attention. And he just adored the library. He was always coming into the library. He had a perfectly good home at the university chaplaincy. So I started to think, what is it this cat's after? Why does he want to come to the library? And then I started to imagine his thoughts. And it was when I started to imagine his thoughts that he developed a character. And I posted those thoughts online. People started to send me those pictures of him, and I would start to analyze them and give my idea for what those he would be doing in those pictures. He would be thinking and doing. So that's sort of how it all came about. And he developed interests, an interest in Nietzsche. He has a wider family, a French cousin called Bibliochat. So he sort of developed a personality, really, just through students sending pictures of him and students, yeah, wanting to know what it was he was thinking. Very strange sort of origin story for a book.
Yeah, I don't find it so strange. I find it actually very organic, very natural.
Mm,
So yeah, especially as someone who had so many cats come in my life and change
mm,
it in the most interesting ways. So, and to be honest, this is sort of how my Cat Coach Diaries started as well, because I was just one day looking at my cat and I'm like, what does he think about this? Like what I'm
Mm,
just dealing
yeah.
with. What would he do? What would he tell me? And
Mm.
that's yeah. And I just started having like a whole first Cat Coach Diaries basically came to me, and I just written it down, and that's how it all started as well. So
It's interesting. It's great to find someone else who's had this creative journey through a cat. It's great.
yeah, yeah.
Um, because in a weird way, there was a community element as well to Library Cat. I always sort of felt slightly ill at ease claiming it fully as my book because it all came about through the student interest in the cat and them sharing pictures. And,
Mm,
if it wasn't for certain people sending certain pictures of him in certain situations, then entire chapters wouldn't exist. So it's a kind of lovely thing of a cat and a writer and a whole community sort of working
mm,
together, which I am very proud of that aspect of it. I think it is completely original in that sense, which is, yeah, it's great. And it's great to hear that other people are finding this way as well with cats for to be the sort of launch pads for creative things. It's
yeah.
great.
And I have to say that in my case, that's literally why I always feel like if I were away from my cat, I can't write these diaries because the
Mm,
ideas always come like from
mm,
little everyday actions, his look, something funny he suddenly does, or it's not like something I could create living on the other side of the world, for example,
yeah.
just remembering him. Like
Hmm.
a few of them I probably could, but like the best ones are usually the ones that really start as, I don't know, his funny look suddenly, or
Mm.
some situation, ordinary situation that just give me that idea. So yeah, yeah.
I think that's what's specifically about cats so lovely is their endless curiosity and response to the human and natural world around them. A dog often kind of sort of is in the world, but really wants to be with you, engage with you, what you're after. Whereas a cat really is sensitive to environment. And I think
Mhm.
it's from that that you can really um, pull out what it is they might be thinking. It's a lovely sort of introspection into their minds and a
Yeah.
great sort of starting point for imaginary conceit because you can sort of see them looking at the world, kind of how we look at the world quite often in a very curious, bemused, or a sort of a desperation to understand something a cat always seems to have, to work something out, which a dog I find you don't see as obviously in a dog, even though they're in theory more intelligent, but
Yeah, I don't think they are, but they're very happy. They're very happy all the time. So they don't have these questions, basically. I
Yeah, they
don't
don't
feel.
have these questions. They totally don't. They don't have the analysis.
Yeah,
They're peaceful
exactly.
beings.
They're just
Bless them.
happy. It's just
Ah,
awesome. They just
yeah,
want to be friends and they're just
yeah,
happy.
yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny with cats as well when you're surrounded by more cats. Like in my case, I had three cats who are siblings, and
Mm,
each of them is such a different character. So,
mm,
like, each of them gives you different ideas, different thoughts, because you can totally embrace that each of them looks at the world differently. It's so funny when you
yeah,
can sense this different energy, that it's not just like
yeah,
generally a cat, but it's just each cat has different
yeah.
thinking, basically. Yeah. So,
Real characters there,
yeah, yeah.
real characters. And I think spending time, I think that's what sort of surprised me about Library Cat was he was he he was neither. He was neither standoffish and aloof and didn't want your time, but nor was he very affectionate, very kind of clingy. He just approached you like a professor. It just approached you like he was deep in thought
Oh,
and he just wanted a quick stroke before he went to the much more important business of learning and he would go into the library. So I think, it would it they do have such specific characters, that
mm,
are that kind of approximate human characters almost, and human sort of character types, at least, of the old
Yeah.
professor or the aloof scholar, you know. Um, yeah.
And then there are of course those cats that are not thinking cats that just want to
Hmm.
play and chase and
Yeah,
are just
absolutely.
very
Yeah.
much or much more like dogs,
A
basically.
little bit more dog,
Yeah,
yes. A
yeah.
little bit more soppy, and are lovely to be around because
Yeah.
they're so loving, you know.
And so
Yeah.
affectionate and yeah, yeah,
And then spicy cats like Tabitha. Tabitha is a spicy cat. Um, and I always wanted to sort of slightly pay homage to the hissy, swipey cats. And actually, my latest book, The Ship's Cat, that I'm just writing at the moment, will be all about a cat. It's sort of like the Odyssey for cats in a way. It's about a cat traveling the world on several boats trying to find his way home.
Oh, that sounds
It's
great.
sort of like, I suppose, Odysseus
Mm,
is sought out by Telemachus in the Odyssey to bring him home. He finds someone, I don't want to give too much away, but he finds someone with whom he can go home with, who he can go home with. And, you know, part of the whole arc is he is a nasty cat in many ways. He's an alley cat, he's spiteful, he doesn't like humans. But I thought there was something in that as well. I thought there was something to be unlocked. Why is he like that? Well, he's like that because he's an alley cat. Is he always like that? Well, no, not if he finds the right human who
mm,
gets him, because that reminds me of Tabitha. And
mm.
Tabitha adores me, but not really anyone else. She's very,
Okay.
she's very, yeah, she will swipe
Aw.
quite often.
Well, going back to the library cat and his cousins, I when I was reading it, I wondered, is that complete like your creativity or imagination, or did that come to you because you saw other cats around, or could you see him with other cats around?
Well, it was, I think. Biblioshat just came to mind because I was doing part of the PhD. I was looking at French authors like Baudelaire and
Mm,
those sort of turn of the century kind of surrealist thinkers, the sort of early phenomenologists and all of that sort of thing. And I was thinking of I was spending a lot of time in that world, and it just came to me that he would have a French cousin called Bibliochat who would be stereotypically and unabashedly French. Um, and there's a lot to, I think, with writing, you know, if you can, if the reader can meet you halfway, it always helps. So everyone knows what French stereotypes are. Everyone knows what English stereotypes are.
mm,
Everyone know, you know, they come with to the story with a certain amount of things you can riff off and play off in their own kind of literary knowledge. So I sort of toyed with that. South London Tom, the English cousin, is actually something my brother said. He took a photo and sent it to me in the middle of me, the early days of me writing the Facebook pages for Library Cat, and he was like, "Look, Alex, it's South London Tom." And it was this really scabby old cat. It's a video actually. I was like, oh, wow. And he was obviously a stray, and he was sitting on a sofa that had been thrown out in South London in Croydon.
mm,
And my brother kept seeing him there. So South London Tom sort of, I have to thank my brother really for that, because he was the sort of he was the sort of one who first coined the phrase. And yeah, so it's a sort of mixture of things, and kind of South London Tom is the prototype for the ship's cat. I didn't really realize it at the time, but it's thinking back. I did the audio book last week for Library Cat, and I've realized reading him out, um, the little moments with South London Tom, it's very like ship's cat. So it's a I kind of it's a sort of mixture. It's a mixture of sort of pure imagination. It's a
mm,
mixture of that with um, things that are um, very kind of gallantly lent to you by family members, or turns of phrase you've heard, or things like that. Yeah, but it is it is as a book, The Library Cat, a kind of very, very sort of, there's an innocence to it. I was quite young, I was like 24 when I started writing it, 25. And I wanted to try and capture the human experience of being a student as well, which is quite it's you are quite you are still quite young and at quite a
Yeah.
vulnerable point of your life. And some of that kind of writing slightly sidles into a feeling that is a little bit adjacent to children's books. And indeed, when I was pitching it, people were like, well, what is this? There's a kid's book, it's sort of kid's book, it's adult book. And the fact that it kind of is both doesn't bother me. I like that because it is that sort of crossover
Mm.
genre. Um, so yeah, I've gone way off your question there. I answered your question and then did a turn and then a shimmy and then came back.
But the turn was very interesting, so don't worry about that at all, giving us more details and more backstory. So all good. Um, that actually brings me to the next question, which is when I read on your website about your journey to actually getting Library Cat published,
Mhm.
which
Mm,
wasn't easy at all.
no.
And once and you described there actually these problems about pitching the book, people
Yeah.
understanding, what it's about, and then you stumbled upon bookshops in Edinburgh where you
Hmm.
found like books about local cats or pets and realized that there is a whole mini subgenre basically. So what is it
Hmm.
about Edinburgh that it has these famous cats and animals?
It's so strange, isn't it? But it really does. Famously, Edinburgh, just like many Victorian British cities, is adorned with statues.
Mm,
Statues of, and of course they're all men. They're David Hume, they are Playfair, they're Stuart Cruikshank, they're all of these. Um, and then there's only I think one or two statues to women. But there's about five statues to animals. So there are more statues of
and women.
animals to commit than there are of women. And Edinburgh produced a lot of famous luminary female thinkers. So do you know what? I don't know why that is. Maybe there is something about the fact that Edinburgh is and always has been a very academic and literary city, butting up against the fact that Scottish culture, particularly Celtic culture, has a strong focus on animals and animals in mythology.
Mm,
Um, Catcher, who is features in The Ghost Cat, my second book, comes out of Scottish mythology and is the sort of cat god. The cat, it's actually a cat fairy, Catcher's described as. So maybe there's something in that. Also, I think Scots as a people, incredibly prolific inventors throughout the 18th, 19th, 20th centuries, hugely successful medics, researchers. They spend a lot of time indoors,
mm,
making, learning, reading, and I think there's something about the animal being the perfect companion in a way.
mm,
I mean, Vorchek the bear, for instance, was a companion for the soldiers on the front and was trained to box. And then Greyfriars Bobby, again, is this idea of companionship in the kind of lonely, solitary isolation and plight. So I don't know. I'm not sure if it's specifically an Edinburgh thing. If you go to St Andrews, they've got Hamish McHamish, and there are down in Cornwall, they've got Mouser, who is the Mousehole cat kind of inspiration, and it does seem to focus around there does seem to be an inordinate amount in Edinburgh though, and the reason why I can't quite explain.
mm. Because it sounded
Um,
to me when I read it. It's like because I want to go to Edinburgh. I've been on my list for a long time, and I'm like, it seems to be like a cat lover's mini
Hmm.
paradise, basically. So
Hmm.
yeah,
It is in so much as it is a very, very kind of self-aware, bookish place.
yeah, yeah.
You know, that kind of it's you come and it's Hogwarts. To someone who hasn't been, it's Harry Potter, it's Hogwarts. It's little kind of cozy libraries with spiral staircases, it's ancient buildings, it's little alleyways that come to mysterious little shops that look like Gringotts. And I think the cat, particularly, always is never far from these scenes, both in reality, because they like bookshops and walks, and in kind of popular culture, because the bookshop and the cat and reading and cats are very, very compatible, because both are solitary, quiet, and at peace with stillness,
Mm,
um, which you might not get so much in a dog. So, in a way that I think Edinburgh, in that sense, is very, very cat appropriate.
mm,
And of course, there's a cat cafe now and that sort of thing. But the fact that Greyfriars Bobby is probably one of the most visited statues in all of Scotland, if not the most visited, and it's of a dog. Yeah, it says something. It is
mm.
unusual. It's an unusual feature of Edinburgh, and I can't quite understand what it is about Edinburgh specifically, but it's a lovely thing.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. That brings us to your second book, The Ghost Cat. Could you tell us in your own words, like summarize what the book is about, what the story is about?
Yes, so it's about a cat, a Victorian cat. So he was born in the late 1800s, who dies and haunts for 120 years the tenement that he lived in and sees all its subsequent owners over the next 120 years. And of course, that is a busy 120 years in history. So he sees the Second World War, he sees the coronation, he sees bits of the pandemic, he sees the millennium, he sees all of these things, but as a ghost of a cat. Um, and it's the sort of the way he haunts is informed by the old proverb of the cat with nine lives that originally comes, I think, medieval times before Shakespeare, but Shakespeare definitely popularized it. So for three lives he can stray, for three lives he can stay, and for three lives he can play. So the ghost cat can only haunt according to those things. So for the first three lives, he's stuck at home. He can only see people subsequent eras in his actual flat where he lived. And then for three lives, he can roam around Edinburgh in those later years. And then for three lives, which are quite fun, he can be mischievous. He can play. He can knock things off tables and make people jump. Um, and he can take revenge, which is nice. He can have a material impact on the tyrants that exist in the world who don't know he's there. Um, so I think and it was all inspired because of Tabitha, my actual cat.
Mm.
When we brought her over into the new flat, we dunked her down and she sniffed around and she went into the bedroom and the back bedroom and she hissed. And she continued to do that for about a week. And she would sort of look around in this weird sort of kind of tense sort of way, like "Wah, wah," like this. And we were like, what is it she's seeing? And that's when the idea came to me that maybe she's seen the ghost of something. And then I
Mm.
thought, well, by extension, maybe it's the ghost of a cat. If they're ghosts of humans, there'll be ghosts of cats, surely. And then I thought, well, what would that ghost have seen? That ghost of a cat. And then I thought that's a really interesting conceit for a book. And when I had the structure of the nine lives, um, it it really sort of helped formulate and shape things. It's really a love letter to Edinburgh because I've lived there 20 years now, I've done ghost tours of the city, and I just love Edinburgh
Mm.
history. It's featured a lot in my sort of research, and it really is a love. It's as much a story and a time traveling story as it is a historic celebration of an incredible city that over 120 years has been behind so much. So again, sort of like Library Cat, it's quite the format is quite unique. You might come to a book called The Library Cat with a blurb about a time traveling cat, thinking very much it's going to be in the tradition of, you know, the time traveler's wife or something like that. But it's kind of not. It's kind of a mixture of history, of kind of whimsy and um, the sort of celebration and kind of companionship. So it's lots of different things in a little book, really.
But it's got that great cat commentary again, and the sort of, the distant view, like, the not human view, which is so funny to see. Because for me, when I was reading it, as it was skipping, well, not skipping, but going
Mhm.
from one period to the other, because obviously there's always like, it's not like 1 year after another, it's periods of time. It was so funny how Grimalkin always found himself in this new period and then seeing these strange things that were nothing like what he was used to or what he's seen the last time. And I was like, this is actually so true. Like, if somebody came to our planet who doesn't know our planet and they would be just so confused by the things that
Yeah.
humans do. It's like so interesting, that idea, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and just, I always think with writing, there is always two opportunities for humor if you're writing with a cat,
Mm.
because there's the opportunity of the fact that they are so curious and they're getting it wrong. So the fact that they can look at a sign on the street of a man digging to say there is men at work here, but they can see it as an umbrella being opened, or they can just misread. Um, you can lean into that because they're such perceptive creatures, but then also they're just completely goofy and silly. So you can lean into the fact that they're completely silly as well. And I always keep that in the back of my mind when I'm writing. At the end of the day, this is just a cat. So at some point, you've got to make sure that the reader doesn't think that you're going too far off piece. This is a cat. At some point, they've got to behave like a cat. They will just freak out when they hear a Hoover coming along, a vacuum cleaner, and they will just hiss and spike and try and flee from it. They will be food motivated. They will, if they see something moving in the middle of a deep thought about philosophy and Nietzsche, just run off and try and get this mouse as it disappears between the floorboards. So it's this sort of, I suppose, quite fun sort of balancing act that you have to play. Yeah, it's very odd, really.
It's so good to be able to see world through the eyes of a different creature, because it gives you that needed distance to see things in a different light, to realize like what are we actually doing.
Yes.
It's so interesting.
Yeah. In a weird way, it's a sort of a slightly odd mindfulness in that, in so much as it forces you to consider things afresh in a different way. But it's simple things, simple everyday occurrences, experiences, those sort of things in a different way. And just check yourself on how ridiculous, we are as humans, as every bit as ridiculous as a cat is, because we take things, we live by these odd notions which don't intrinsically make sense quite often. So yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
And I think a cat is a perfect animal for that, especially because of their always judging look.
Yes.
So it's really like that really makes you like stop and reconsider, like, what might the cat be thinking about what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Like,
Absolutely. It's
true.
great to play with. It's great fun to play with.
Yeah. So the story of the ghost cat, the house that it takes place in, was that inspired by a particular house, or is that again pure imagination?
So that, yes, it was very much our flat that we live in now. So
Mm.
when I thought about the rooms, the front bedroom, the back bedroom, the kitchen, the parlour, I just thought of our flat now. It's actually an Edwardian flat, so that's sort of 1905. Victoria died in 1901 in the UK, and Edward came in 1901 to 1910. So a little bit later than I pitched it in the novel, but I actually thought, I think when you write a book, it's sort of like swimming across a channel of water. There's this terrifying moment about a third of the way or a quarter of the way in where you don't feel the bottom and you're kind of committed to sailing through the deep over to the next bit where you will start to feel land underneath your feet coming up. And anything that can be a sort of life buoy as you make that trip is helpful. So having my actual flat that I could just go around and look at if I got stuck was a lovely life buoy, a lovely sort of reassurance. And I thought it would feel more real I thought the reader would be able to see that flat more clearly if I could literally see it, literally go around and look at
Mm.
it. Um, that said, I did pick a fictitious address. Well, no, I didn't. I thinking that if one or two people might read this book, a few people, I picked 7/7 Marchmont Crescent, which is a slightly more elegant looking street than ours, and a slightly more I just preferred the name a little bit more, and I preferred a few things about it. I was actually going to change it again, but the publisher said it was too late. But now there are people actually going to that address and knocking on the door, or people messaging me saying, "Oh, I lived in that address." Because of
Mm.
course those flats as student flats have been for years, so
Mm.
lots of people come and go through them often. So I feel a bit bad for the current resident of that flat because they're people coming and sort of now and again knocking or sort of seeing. So it's but yes, I like the area, I like the place. I could lean into what I knew with that, which was very helpful. So it was my flat. And, when my mother-in-law comes up, she stays in Ailey's room. And the room where Grimalkin first encounters a vacuum cleaner, I imagine our wardrobe. And, so it's part of it is we were renovating the flat and we peeled back the wallpaper and we found these layers,
Mm.
like actual layers, like wallpaper from 1980s, which is wood chip, and 1960s, which was sort of brown and orange, going right back to Edwardian times, and the sort of wallpaper of a very famous Scottish designer called Charles René Mackintosh. So that really helped me sort of crystallize this notion that this is a house through the ages that
Mm.
changes aesthetically. And I wanted to celebrate the aestheticness as well as the
Hmm.
actual story. I like that side of things. So yeah, it was our flat.
Mm.
Yeah, if you ever come over to Edinburgh, you've got to come and have a cup of tea and come into our flat because
Oh,
you'll
I'd love
see his little
to.
house. Yeah, totally.
How did you choose the periods to which Grimalkin would travel to?
So yeah, it was really because I wanted a mixture. It was my own kind of my own tastes really. The
Mm.
sort of eras I wanted to see and I was interested in. The sort of eras where I thought Grimalkin could affect some interesting chaos and a desire to champion the underdog in Ailey and have that person who history has forgotten. Um, so sort of all those sort of things together made me choose the eras that I did. Although I think it's sort of like Picasso said, if you don't look back upon a work that you've done and feel some degree of like regret, you're not a developing artist. So I do look back at Ghost Cat and I think, I'll do this now, I'll do that now. I
Mm.
definitely think, had I done it again, I'll probably make it longer.
Mm. I have to say, when I was reading it, I thought it would make like a perfect material for like a cartoon TV show
Mhm,
where, each season would be in one of the periods that you described. Because I come from
mhm,
the film background, so my brain works in this film way every time.
Hmm.
So I was like, wow, this would make such a great show.
Mm.
Like each
Do you
season
know
in
what?
different period.
You know what? Yes. And something's developed in the last sort of month, which is very exciting, but very early days.
Mm,
But along the lines of sort of maybe animation, film-based things, because
mm,
you're not the first to say it. A few people have said it, so I reached out to someone who's shown interest, and it
mm,
might be that I think you're right. I don't know if you've ever seen The Illusionist.
mhm,
It's set in Edinburgh. It's a lovely little animation. Um, and if you see I think animation, it would work very nicely with the type of animation that's sort of quite simple and not like a Pixar, not like a
mm,
really perfect sort of that sort of thing, but a sort of more slightly more hand-drawn, naturalistic sort of animation. I could just
mhm.
see that. And who knows? I mean, the
That would be
thing, as you'll
awesome.
know, the film world works very slowly.
Yeah,
So,
super slow, yeah.
you know,
And
um,
especially
yeah.
animation takes years. But
Mm,
it's
mm.
worth it when it works
Who
out.
knows?
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Because I did feel when I was reading the stories that I would love Grimalkin to stay longer in each of them.
Mm, mm,
So
hmm,
yeah, I thought like
hmm,
this could just like work
hmm,
in so many ways, like to expand in the future. And
mm,
was
hmm.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
wondering if you
Yeah.
ever considered that, like coming back
Mm,
to the Coast Cat.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to. And people have already sort of written fan fiction that I've
Mm,
like imagined like longer in that time. And yeah, I would actually like to do that. I can imagine like sort of when the ship's cat submitted, which is on the 1st of September is the deadline.
mm,
Um, I'm not going to have a book to write. It will feel weird. It's that really weird thing of feeling very stressful now, and I'm looking
mm,
forward to it being in so much. But at the same time, you know, I will feel bereft in a strange sort of way, and that might be the sort of time to start my blog again and imagine, you know, do further
mm.
stories in
Yeah.
those, develop some eras and develop some, and also maybe add some.
Mm.
Um, it would be a fun little project to do, to put him into these other things and see how he would, you know, develop. Um, so yeah, I potentially would return to it, I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
I could see myself doing that.
Yeah, going back to the stories in the book. So basically, you didn't find any hidden Rockefeller diamond in your home, I suppose.
I didn't, although we did find a
Uh,
hidden window. We
okay.
found a
Well,
hidden window. We came into the flat, pulled back some wallpaper, and found an entire hidden window.
that's
And
crazy.
it was mad because why would someone have covered up a window in a flat?
Exactly.
What did it go to? All these sorts of things. And I guess that was the very early starting of me thinking of the flat story. And I started a social media page, which sort of got lots of followers and that sort of thing. And my side sort of interest in life is renovation and that sort of thing. Um, so I found discoveries, but never found anything like a Rockefeller ring. Oh, could you imagine the swimming
Yeah.
pool I would install, the private jet I would acquire, the holidays in Mustique I would sun myself on? Oh, to find a Rockefeller ring. Um, so yes, it's so silly, isn't it? But yeah,
I love that. That was
yeah.
like my
Who
favorite
knows?
part. I was like, oh, this is like just so possible in a way. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, you never know. You
yeah.
never know with these old houses, the stories
And
they keep. And
we live in these ancient countries, right? You know,
yeah,
like I mean, obviously Czech Czech Republic as it is now isn't ancient, but you know, going back Austro-Hungary, going back
yeah,
all these times, you know, right back to the Normans and the Britons and the Normans and Saxons and that in the UK. There's a very popular TV show at the moment in the UK called The Detectorists that's about these two men going and trying finding gold in East Anglia with metal detectors and finding an old Roman hoard. And there's something about that is very, and it sort of is very compatible with this idea of cats and coziness and contemplation and the land, which is discovering old secrets in things,
Mm.
old objects that are somehow buried, lost time capsules. I mean, it's very quite intoxicating, you know,
Mm.
to think about how these things would come to be. So, yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, there will be, you know, within a few miles of us, there will be secrets somewhere hidden
Yeah.
that no one knows about, you know? It's
Yeah.
mad.
We should- Yeah. Well, mentioning Czech Republic, you told me actually that you have Czech origins. So
Yeah.
do you know any of the Czech language, or do you have any Czech traces in your life that you could tell us
Um,
about?
so it's very strange because I sort of feel weirdly more Czech than I actually am, I think. My mum's half Czech, so
Mm.
she grew up in Pilsen around there. My auntie was born, I think, in Pilsen, and yeah, it was my granddad who was Czech, and he worked for the Allies as an RAF Spitfire engine engineer, and that's where he met my grandma. And my mum basically had her happy times in life in the Czech Republic because her life in the UK in the 1950s wasn't very nice. So UK, post-war East End of London in the 1940s and 1950s, I sort of go into this a tiny bit in the Ship's Cat actually, was very grim,
Mm.
unpleasant, full of poverty. My mum was in that such a family. Um, so through my mum, there's always been a luster of mystique about the Czech Republic.
Mm.
And this is very much, I have sort of furthered this dream, this idyll in my head over descriptions I've heard of Prague and through watching Klutuk so many times and watching Klutuk with my little boy as well.
Oh,
Um,
awesome.
yeah, so I'm reliving him all again and it's amazing. And
Mm.
the hold it has on the imagination. And so much of Klutuk inspired my writing because he is, I mean, I used to watch him obsessively beyond anything else. He was sort of the only thing I would watch.
Mm.
And people in the UK didn't know who he was. So
Yeah.
my friends would come round and they would all be watching, you know, I don't know, they'd be watching Super Ted or Sooty and Sweep and Sue or Teletubbies or whatever was going on back then in the UK. And I was watching this little mole. Um, but they would be transfixed quite often.
Mm.
And there's something about the way that he finds interesting solutions to problems. And there's something about the way he sees the world and understands the human world that I think like made a proper indelible mark in me
Mm.
and my writing.
Mm.
The
Yeah.
one that was 1957 that won the Venice Film Festival, the Mole and the Kalhotki. That
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
obviously is the very first one, but
Yeah.
also the one in the city. Oh,
Mhm.
my favorite one is the lollipop one. I don't know why. That just the opening bars of that music take me right back to my childhood home and summer days, and
Mm.
just the door being open and my little friend from next door coming, who used to watch these horrible sort of American cartoons through
Yeah.
satellite, which people didn't have back then, but they
Mm.
had one of the first like huge satellite dishes. And like him being mesmerized by like the mole in the car and the lollipop one, and just like thinking, yeah, it's because it's so good and it's so subtle and
Yeah.
so thought-provoking, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I owe him a lot. My mum would often sort of stand alongside me and sort of say a bit and sort of say, oh, like, oh, my auntie Babby, my grandma Maria used to live in a house exactly like that in the background, and it was always infused with my mum's commentary. And my
Mm.
mum's first language was Czech, although she actually never speaks it now and probably doesn't remember much of it 'cause she stopped speaking it when she was they moved to England when she was sort of 10, 9. But they sort of spoke a mixture of Czech and English back in the Czech Republic. So her language was always a little bit weaker, but she's over time forgotten the Czech because she's just not spoken it. But the food as well. So I always grew up with that Czech food.
Mm,
Um, and it's this, my mum's very flamboyant, she's very poetic. There's just something about her that's European and not British in
mm,
that traditional stereotypical sense. And I've always loved it, and I've always sort of loved the kind of colourfulness of her and her sisters being together, who are
mm,
now, they're in their 70s. They're these sort of big babushka ladies bundling down the high street, causing chaos in their floral dresses and, and their expostulations at people. There's something so kind of contrary to Britishness in it, which
mm,
I love. Um, so I've always sort of felt, and I've always said it, I've always sort of been proud of it. I've always kind of brought it up if people we're talking about backgrounds in a way that probably you wouldn't normally if you're only a quarter of something, but um, it just feels like a bigger part of and explains a lot of who I am. Um,
mm.
so yeah, and I kind of don't want to go to the Czech Republic because I don't want to ruin the image I have of Prague and the image I have of Mesto Tauškov and Adamov and these places where my mum grew up. Um, but I think we will. I think probably Prague will go in the next couple of years. Uh, I've written sort of even before writing novels, wrote poems more, and I sort of imagined Wenceslas Square and all of that, and it's probably completely different to how I imagined it. But I want to see it and maybe shatter the dream if need be, but in the interests of realism, uh, go back and see where my family grew up, and my granddad lived and all of that.
What are some of your
Mhm.
favorite ways to slow down? Because this podcast is also about like taking time for ourselves, slowing down, living the slow life. So what
Hmm.
are some of your favorite ways to slow down?
Yeah. Like the opening spiel you did about imagine a cafe with warm cinnamon buns. Oh, it's so true. Do you know what? I felt calmer in the last few days than I felt in a long time. This house, is a little fairy tale house where my parents are, and it opens out directly over the sea. And I just read a book on my bed with the sea breeze blowing in, and then stopped reading and then just looked out over the sea at the fishing boats coming through. I mean, and I felt a profound calm that I've not felt in a few months. So that was lovely. But I love doing things with my hands, restoration, DIY, home
Hmm.
improvement. So I'm not a very sporty person, right? So I don't really do group sports, football, tennis, and I don't go to the gym either. So then I've got the horrible, horrible problem of becoming a fat tub of lard unless I do something. So, because I've got that Eastern European thing going on here, a bit jowly, if I'm not careful, I'll become a bit of a barrel. So I love anything to do with decoration, restoration, polishing, cleaning. I like nothing more than going into an old house and thinking, how can we bring this house back?
Mm,
So much of what I do is with my mind. Um, and it's nice to completely forget about that and just look at things and handle things and go up and down ladders, scraping, peeling. I love all that stuff. So DIY is something I do a lot. I also love model trains. So in my old flat, we had a whole model train network around the ceiling. When I have time, I love building those chain networks and the DIY involved with getting the signaling right and getting the train and the software to get all the trains to know where they are and and the software that involves making trains drive on schedule. I like that, makes me unwind. And
It's sort
apart
of
from
a
that, I like
meditation,
boats.
right?
It is like a meditation. It is, because it's completely again, it's sort of imagining
Mm,
yourself in that different world,
mm,
and in a weird megalomaniacal way, when you think about it, being an overlord of this model universe and making it
mm.
work, you know, to order. I dare say there's a bit of autism or Asperger's lurking in me somewhere, because my like for that sort of thing is very evident. Um, but I also love flying. I love going on a plane. I adore it.
Mm.
So if it's strange, I know, but if I think I'm getting sort of tense or too bogged down, like the thought of just even flying home to see my parents, I love that. I like IKEA. I unwind completely in home renovation stores. So those last two things are two things that most people find horrendous. IKEA and aeroplanes. I find them the most becalming, relaxing things on earth. Um,
Even
they recharge
putting
me.
even, even putting IKEA furniture together.
Love it. Love
Oh
it.
my
I would
goodness.
do it. I would do it for a week. Um,
Wow.
I would do that endlessly. One of the happiest times of my life in lockdown was when I was furloughed from work, because I work in a theatre sort of during the day, and I thought, how am I going to make money? Because I just finished the PhD, I had no income streams. My wife was a nurse, I was away. So I just put on Facebook that I'd happily do DIY for people, and people basically called me up to come and assemble their IKEA furniture, and I've really loved it. So yeah, between all of that, I'm a very strange person, I understand, but between all of that, I can unwind, although I've had a very dark time in my life about in 2014, where I suppose I went too long without unwinding, and life got very, 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 very stressful
Mm,
with the PhD and buying all that, that I slipped into what was a really bad episode of depression. So coming out of that, unfortunately, I've been fine ever since, but coming out of that in 2014, I'm sort of I have a greater respect for the those parts of life that are about unwinding, and not to take them for
mm.
granted. So yeah, I try and do it in a whole physical bodily way when I'm at those points. But
And
yeah, I
that
suppose
was
that's what I do.
that's when library came to your life, right? During that difficult
Yes,
time.
yes, it was. And what was odd about that was, one of the nice things about that, which I don't think about much, is the fact that, when you are very, very depressed, there are several horrible things your mind can trick you into thinking. But one of the things is that you are absolutely and 100% worthless. There's nothing that you're doing is of any worth
Yeah.
to people. Just the point that you being here is a burden. Um, and I shut down all my social media, and I came away from uni, and I actually came into this little room here in my parents' house, and I sort of just hunkered down and felt utterly, utterly miserable. But one of the continual little reminders that kept happening were people sending me messages saying, Library Cat, where are you? What are you thinking in this picture? And people saying, I really miss this. This really cheered me up, this blog.
Mm,
And it really, I've been very homesick, and people sort of opening up and saying about their struggles and how the page helped. And that actually, I think I didn't have any real social media connection at all. But I read a couple of those messages, and it really helped, to make me feel, oh, there's something. Um, so in a weird way, he sort of remained a common denominator through it in a funny sort of way,
mm.
and did actually help. It's one of the reasons I went for it. I'm going to get this published. I went for it. When I came through that in 2014, I think I have been like before, I'd have not been confident enough. But because I'd been through such a horrible thing and I wanted to live life every day to the full, I thought, no, I'm going to do this. I'm actually going to really, really try and get this
Mm.
published, with a zealousness and a drive that I wouldn't have had all that not happened. So yeah, I think in a weird way that time uh, is very influential in many ways. How things turned out. Yeah.
I think
Mm.
cats always come to our lives for a reason. So I think he came
Mm.
to save you and to turn you
Mm.
into a
Mm.
writer, probably.
Yeah. 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 Totally. He did. He did turn me into a writer in a funny sort of way. He totally did. Um, yeah. Because I'd written other things that hadn't ever got interest or success or anything really. I
Mhm.
tried, but he really changed things. So yeah, it was like he came to make me into that writer. Yeah, it was.
Sadly enough, you say in the foreword to the book that he disappeared right when you
Hmm.
finished the project, right?
It was very, very strange. So it
Yeah.
was literally the day, and I can remember where I was sitting in the living room of the old flat. It was literally the day that the publisher got back to say, we've done the second round of proofs and we're ready to go to print. And I heard that day from the chaplaincy, from Father Dermot Morin, who the Catholic chaplains, the Catholic, actually part of the Black Friar Order, who I found out a lot later about what they actually do in their denomination and that. Um, they were always so kind about the project, so supportive, and they said just out of your just so you know, Jordan's not come back in for the last few days, but we're not too worried because it was springtime.
Mm.
The book was released in May, so I think we were going to print sort of in March. They said he often does roam quite late, quite several days at this time, but we are a bit worried. And I said, oh gosh. And I remember we went looking for him, and I think I put on the Facebook even that he's missing, and were search parties around Edinburgh missing, and it was
Mm.
awful because there would be so many false leads because he's a black and white cat. Someone would send pictures of a cat from the side or behind or in the distance, and because he only had white here in a sort of yin and yang kind of shape, and then a white paw, so many cats could have been him. So I remember
Mm.
going to all these parts of Edinburgh and sometimes finding the cats in question, and my heart would sink because it would be like it was obviously this cat they saw, and it wouldn't be. And this little cat would come up and stroke me and nuzzle into me, whoever it was. So we still don't know what happened. We don't know why. We don't know where.
Mm.
And unless someone's keeping something from me, I
Mm.
don't know why they would, or from the friars at George Square. One of the friars, Father Lou, wanted to make a statue in commemoration for him in George Square,
Mm.
just by the library, which he still wants to do. But um, very odd, very
Yeah.
odd that a cat that was just so central to the community and in such a, it's not a busy part of, not, they're not busy roads there.
Mm.
They're not, it's central Edinburgh, like a lot of probably central Prague, is quite pedestrianised and I don't know. But yeah, it's very sad. And I'd love to know what happened to him. I like to think he's just, in that way, in that cat way, he's just, living out his days with some old lady in a kind of suburban house and just no one's the wiser. But yeah, it's that was a sad turn for sure.
Yeah. Well, maybe he went in search of the cat that he decided at the end of the book that he needs to
Yeah.
and they're
He
living
went for
happily
Puddle.
somewhere.
He went for Puddle Cat. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Or my theory is that his mission was just to get to publish his story, and then he finished his mission, so he went on to
And
help somebody else.
yeah, maybe, maybe. They are here for a reason. I think you're
Yeah.
right.
That was just delightful. Do you too feel like hopping on a plane and going to Edinburgh right now? In fact, I might have just booked myself a ticket after the conversation. And if you can't exactly do that, make sure to grab Alex's beautiful books and get transported with them. But before you do, let's finish with some Czech old pronostics for September and fill up our pantries for winter. Czech folk tradition is rich with pronostics, and though quite difficult to translate them into English, let me try and share a couple of them with you, which are connected with this time of the year. So here they come. Wenceslas is coming, prepared fireplace stove. On St. Wenceslas, there is usually a mud flood. If there is a storm on Wenceslas Day, it heralds long-lasting warmth. If the day is nice on Wenceslas Day, a pleasant autumn will come. On St. Wenceslas Day, everything is ripe. In fact, everything essential was to be harvested before St. Matthew's Day on the 21st September, and if that deadline was not met, there was another chance to do so until St. Michael's Day on the 29th, which is exactly one day after St. Wenceslas Day. So truly, everything was ripe on St. Wenceslas Day. That said, September is also the month to fill our pantries with all the deliciousness that will keep us happy all through winter, like jams, chutneys, fruit compotes, or fermented veggies, homemade vinegars, which are super easy and packed with nutrients. We can also still dry many herbs and plants, as well as fruit like apples, for example. Talking of apples, September is, of course, a big apple month. And the ways in which you can enjoy apples is truly never-ending. As much as I love to get creative with apples, I often opt for our family's favorite recipes of grandma's apple strudel or something that has a really funny name of apples in a bathrobe. It's basically small apples wrapped in short crust pastry with the middle of the apples hollowed and then filled with quark, cinnamon, and jam filling. And then baked, of course. Absolutely delicious. And how about some homemade baby apple sauce or apple jam, perhaps? These will not just prepare you for some winter pleasure, but the smell of cooking these will fill your home with coziness unlike anything else. If you've got extra harvest this year of apples, pears, or anything else, September would also make the perfect time to think and prepare those Christmas presents and gift some meaningful, delicious presents this year made with love. If you'd like to join our little seasonal apple challenge, you can once again find it in the Positive Mind Club at the end of our September journaling session. So, see you there. And that's it for our first episode of Season 2. I'll see you again on October 3rd in an episode which will be all about the season of the witch, with our lovely guest Bethany, also known as the Yogi Witch. So stay tuned. Meanwhile, don't forget to subscribe to Cat Coach Café on Substack to get notified when new episodes are up, but also to not miss any of the Cat Coach Diaries. If you would leave a rating, a comment, or follow us at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else you listen to your podcast, we would appreciate it so very much, as it would help us not only reach a wider audience, but also to continue doing what we do and bring you more podcast episodes in the future. Until next time, stay cozy, stay warm, and cuddle those cats of yours.